Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon. And we're going to double that. We haven't rehearsed, but we've known each other for 20 years. So we're going to take you through a little bit of background. I'm going to take you back beyond 1999 to a little bit more history because it's relevant. And then we're going to talk about Scarborough. So, should I do the clicking and you do the talking to start with?
That's great.
Yeah. So, this is Nick Taylor.
Hello. Good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to be here. And thank you as a member of the Academy of Urbanism. So a big thank you to the UDG for a very warm welcome here and being so well looked after these last couple of days. It's been really, really interesting, and I've learnt such a lot this last couple of days. It's been great. Thank you very much indeed for having me. And look forward to seeing you again, I hope.
A round of applause to all the organisers.
Yeah, please do.
But anyway, Nick just quickly going to explain what he's doing now.
Yeah.
Or has done.
Right, okay, just who am I and why am I standing here? I feel a bit fraudulent sometimes standing at these sort of meetings because I'm not an urban designer, I'm not an architect, I'm actually a hotelier. But that gives me a bit of an in when it comes to placemaking. Because when we had the Urban Renaissance conference in Scarborough back in about 2002, I realised that we had an awful lot in common. It was all about how do you design a space, how do you make it work, how do you make it profitable, how do you make the boys and girls come to work on Christmas Day when you don't pay them any extra, you just pay them the standard amount, and how do you get the guests to come back time and time again. So actually that was really, I thought that was the essence of placemaking largely, and that's why I got stuck into it. So after about 10 years working very closely with the likes of Charles, because Charles worked for JTP, and JTP were the principal architects working on Scarborough's urban regeneration. One of the things I went on to work for other people, and after that I went to work at the Peace Hall, which is this magnificent space in Halifax, as you can see here. I was heavily involved in the strategy, writing the strategy, and then the lettings policy of who we would have in the units to come along and make that place vibrant every day, as opposed to just a place where you go and watch Elbow, or you might go and watch, a major show. And that was great. We had lots of fun there. And currently I'm working a couple of days, it's about 4 or 5 days a month over in Kendal, delivering the vision there. I was working again with Charles a few years ago. We went in and did a community planning exercise, a charrette, a really intensive period of community engagement. From that delivered a vision, and at the end of the session I said to the various people from Kendal, if you need a bit of help just delivering this in the future, give me a shout. So that's what I'm doing now for 2 or 3 days a week, about 4 or 5 days a month I get for that.
Managing a town team there?
I'm managing a town team, and it's through extensive community engagement that we work with them there in Kendal. So it's a very, very interesting process and hugely well sort of thought of in the town. And then in a minute I'll come back and let you all know what we did about Scarborough. But over to you, Charles, about JTP.
JTP, we're an architecture, master planning and community planning practice. We're about 100 staff in London and Bristol. We do architecture, big and small. This is just down the road in Liskeard. Just recently completed workspace for creative and media startups. Master planning with design coding that goes along with it, architecture, beauty planning, and I just wanted to start with this picture. I don't know if I haven't been here for the last 2 days, but obviously there should be some text with it, but it's a quote. But it basically says that we're going to build a lot, and you recognise the two people. You're looking forward to going and see Arsenal tomorrow. But me, I grew up in born in the 60s, and looking out from my suburban West London home, I started to see things like this happening. And around the country, and I'm sure many of you have got similar experiences, these are the sort of places that designers were expecting, and planners were expecting, and politicians were expecting communities to live in. And I've spent a lot of my career involved in processes such as this, which of course is both devastating for the communities and people who have been moved around, but also is environmentally totally unsustainable as well. And in the States, this is what was happening through a post-war period with the building of the Interstate Highway, and Jane Jacobs obviously famously reacted with many others to this sort of imposition of a professional class on on communities which were, you know, being devastated. And, you know, many of the ideas, we were just talking over lunch, many of the ideas were based on good intentions, of course, but that's why the urban design group exists today. But in the States, people were responding against these sorts of issues and others, and the civil rights movement in the late 60s led to this gentleman, Whitney Young Jr., being asked to appear at the, sorry, I don't know why the quotes are not appearing, but he was basically telling the architectural profession that they were irrelevant in relation to equity, the civil rights movement. They were doing nothing. And it's time they started to sit up and wake up and do something. So the RUDATs was started up in response to that, a way of architects, planners working directly with communities to solve thorny issues that the communities and their governments were not able to solve. And this was the first RUDAT. I'm sorry, the text is not appearing. But it says RUDAT and it says River Falls, and that was the first place that the American Institute of Architects and Architects and Planners went to work with a community. And for many people, this is sort of credited, this process, which became very popular very quickly, with the establishment of urban design as a discipline in the States and beyond, including over on this side of the pond. That rhymed, it wasn't meant to. But subsequently, you know, we were at the time, HTA, John Thompson, before my time, working in the community architecture movement really was forming in the 80s, and this was a landmark project at Leaview, Hackney, where the architectural practice HTA, Hunt Thompson, moved into the estate. It was very obvious that the commission was about, you know, just refurbishing a failing estate, new bathrooms, new kitchens, but actually there were much more fundamental problems. So the team went in and started working directly with the community to understand what the real needs were, and through the creation of a vision and then marching on Whitehall, funds were liberated and this amazing scheme was developed, which, you know, really started to address the fundamental needs and the aspirations of people and turn hell into paradise. And a lot of notice was taken. And at that point as well, and this is where the sort of story starts to join up, a group of community architects from the UK were invited over to the States to the American Institute of Architects conference, Remaking Cities. And that was chaired by the current king, Prince of Wales at the time, and a group of architects, including John Thompson, went across the States, and as well as discussing a problem about the future of post-industrial cities, and at the time people didn't really know if there were futures for all these places. Obviously we have a greater understanding of how to address that now, but at the time that wasn't clear. But at the same time there was a RUDAT, an urban design assistance team process was run with one of the steel works communities along one of the valleys to create a vision. And that was the first time really that we'd seen a process, a structured process of working with a large number of people over a very short period of time. So that sort of multi-day community planning weekend or RUDAT process was a revelation to many people from the UK and was brought back across the Atlantic. And it's really about the three-legged stool, and that should say something like government, developer, community. So without the third leg of a stool, it's always going to be very unstable, and, you know, at its worst can lead to corruption and buildings that don't work and places that don't work. So involving the community and involving community in iterative processes that we go through, research has shown that by building consensus is about taking people on a journey, and design is about iteration, and communities can follow that track as well, and it's very beneficial for all. So there's another quote there from Angela Rayner saying that communities will be involved in all the building that's going to happen. And back towards an urban renaissance, Richard Rogers, John Proscott, Angela Rayner's equivalent 25 years ago, who commissioned this report. And it was really picked up it was all about, obviously, the things you've been discussing over the last couple of days. I haven't been here, as I say, but one of the sort of key elements is about focusing on the quality of place to attract investment, focusing on arts and cultural, creative economies, but also community engagement. So Yorkshire Forward picked that up and formed the Urban Renaissance panel. And John Thompson was on the panel, and Alan Simpson, who was also at the RUDAT at the Pittsburgh conference. And Alan Simpson was head of Urban Renaissance for Yorkshire Forward and set up this panel that was multi-aimed, obviously, but it was really about the idea that we want to create world-class cities and towns across the Yorkshire Humberside region. And a way to do this is to improve the quality of environment, improve the quality of place, involve the community, set up town teams, and then with funding that was there through the regional development agencies to get going. But the first thing to do, of course, was to create a vision. So I'm going to hand back to Nick just to tell you a little bit about the starting point.
Thank you very much, Charles. The gentleman in the picture just now was Terry Hodgkinson, who was the chief executive of Yorkshire Forward, and he was a very, very inspiring guy. And he basically, the RDAs were set there to deliver this urban renaissance. And we took the Richard Rogers document very, very seriously in Scarborough. We saw it as an actual. I'll do the rest of it on you, okay? And we saw it. If we stuck to the letter of that, we had a very good chance of making something serious out of it. And the RDAs were there. They wanted to revitalise urban areas. They wanted to promote sustainable development. They wanted to enhance the quality of life of the people who live there by being involved in education, by being involved in healthcare, and in reinvention and the renaissance and the reinvention of the towns. They wanted to very much strengthen local economies, and they wanted to encourage civic engagement, which was really interesting because we ran that, and I'll come on to that shortly. And finally, they wanted to build a regional identity, which again, for the people of Yorkshire, really made a big difference. The Yorkshiremen don't like to be slightly marginalised at all. They get very grumpy about that sort of thing. Speaking as Lancastrian, I can say that with enthusiasm. They get very cheesed off if you miss them out on anything. So when we started this programme of activity, of engaging with the community, they were all over it like a rash. This is Scarborough. This is the particularly posh part of Scarborough back in the days. It is Britain's first seaside town. I know many people from other seaside towns may come and say, no, we were there first, but believe you me, I'm nearly a Yorkshireman. They did invent the idea of seaside towns. And it was a particularly pleasant place to go. As you can see, it's a hugely popular. That was the beach on a quiet day, the top left there. We invented, they allege, bathing machines, the things on the right, top right there. Punch and Judy, that was invented elsewhere, I've no doubt. But it was a very, very popular place, a really popular seaside town. But it was a sort of one single town. It operated for 6 or 8 weeks in the summer and a bit outside of that until relatively recently. So it was a very sort of focused place on the world of tourism. Fishing was a massive piece of work on the other hand, and you can see in the top right-hand picture there, that's the fishing fleet setting sail out of Scarborough. So it was a significant place as far as the actual the fishermen were concerned, and still is, by the way. We'll come on to that shortly. We did this programme called A Vision for Scarborough back in April 2002, I think it was. 2002. And it was an immensely popular time. I managed the hotel behind the bus there, and that's all these guys are staying with the people like Charles and all the team, and I got hugely involved in this process as one of the sort of the more interested member of the community, and I got so interested in it, I applied for the job when they advertised it, because at one of the meetings I said to Charles, and said to John actually, John Thompson, he'd set a load of jobs for us all to do, and I was just sat there like an ordinary general person in the middle of the room. I said, John, it's all very well you asking for somebody to do all these jobs that need doing over the next month before you come back in a month's time. I said, but tomorrow I've got a whole load of hotel stuff I've got to get done. I've got to put the Christmas brochure to bed, I've got to discipline a chef, I've got all sorts of nonsense to deal with. I said, we need to employ somebody full time. She said, go away and write a person spec and a job description. So I did and applied for it and got the job. And So, but it was, and I then spent 10 extremely happy years running this program of work. So it started with a great database of people. We had 15 people rock up, 1,500 people rather, rock up over the weekend. We had this planning charrette, some great data, lots of input from the arts community.
Can I just add that, you know, a large part of this, we had a sort of 3 or 4 month build up to the community planning weekend, which was a 5-day process of workshop, 2 days of workshops, 3 days of team working, and then a report back on the Tuesday, as it was Tuesday evening. And a big part of that, as well as involving schools and all of the sort of range of stakeholders throughout the town who came, as well as general community. We had the Alan Akemore Theatre, and their youth group did a presentation at the beginning to launch it of what does regeneration mean, which was fantastic, inspiring. But as well, the hands-on planning, the ability to sit down and draw together, which is low-tech but still incredibly effective, and it acts as a proxy really for people to have discussions in ways that they never ever normally do, and I'm sure many of you have done this, but it actually, you know, worked. There were sort of 2 days of this, and the iterative impact of that really was very powerful and covered all of the bases as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we ran a very good program called Problems, Dreams and Solutions, which I'm sure many of you have done, many of you have experienced, and it's a very low-tech, as you just say, process that starts before the community planning, the mapping business starts the actual hands-on planning. Go on, Charles.
Just next one.
Yeah, next one. And from it you start to then draw down what the people feel are going to be most important.
So as well as a plan, we also sort of drew the concepts and the vision, and the 10 towns of Scarborough was something I think that really kind of addressed what the issues, you know, what people were saying, because obviously for everyone they have slightly different focus points in terms of where they are. But it also helped to show the decline and the current state, but also the future, in ways that then fed into the town team working.
Yeah, so the basic business was here, from our point of view, and particularly mine as a hotelier back in those days, was that our business yield was pretty rubbish, really. And the business yield is the sort of level of profit you make in relation to the turnover, that type of thing. I won't bore you with how you calculate it, but it really was pretty poor. We relied on coach business, we relied on fairly low quality business, occasional periods of very high quality stuff. So you really had to flex your team up and down, be able to cope with all the different types of demands around the place, and take whatever business you could when you could. But that really, we wanted to change that. We wanted to take the business a little bit more up market, charge a better price, make a bit more profit out of it. And then the next one, yeah. And what we did from the program, from the charrette that we did, I then got the role as running the program, and we set about then getting this organisation into some sort of shape. So we set this actual team up. We had a town team. Please don't discuss it, confuse that rather with the Mary Porter's process of having a town team. That was more about retail, when the retail started to hit the ropes. This was before that. This is back in about 2003 and 4 we established this. And the town team was that anybody could come to a town team meeting. That was a thing that was a real challenge, and some of our local elected members didn't think this was a great deal of fun, because we started getting at our town team meetings, and all of these action groups that underpinned these. Now do bear in mind, the town team and the 6-7 groups rather underneath there, they were all volunteers and regular local people from the town, all with a particular interest in something that really grabbed them, and they came along, bless them, once a month to turn up to their own meeting, and then very often once a month they come to the town team meeting where we all reported back, shared what we'd all been doing and collaborated and pooled ideas and stuff. And why the elected members didn't like it, a lot of these people were quite a bit smarter than the average elected member. In Scarborough in those days, they're struggling to tie the shoelaces, I think, some of them, and they've changed since, I hasten to add, but they actually, some of them stuck around and got very involved with us, and that actually then started to really gel, because the community and the elected members were working alongside.
And one of the critical points about this whole process is that the sign-off for all the RDA funding that would come into the town once the vision had been set was done by the town team. So it wasn't just in the control of the council with a small group of stakeholders or whatever. It was actually a genuine sort of three-pronged approach. carry on.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, it was indeed. We haven't got time. Yeah. But some of these groups are still doing stuff around the town hugely effectively as well, I might add. We've talked while we've been here about having an urban room somewhere in the town, and this is what this effectively was. This was the Renaissance office. It's where everybody congregated. Trying to get a day's work done in there was absolutely a nightmare sometimes because people just wandered in wanting a chat. What are you doing? Who are you? Why are you? There's a spelling mistake on the plan outside, whatever it might be. It was a great place to work. And
you had a sign coming in.
We had a sign coming in saying, please leave your politics at the door. And we had quite a few signs like that, didn't we? It was quite fun. We really challenged people's traditional concept about what a local authority would be like. So here's one of the programs, one of the projects that we did deliver when we first started the discussions and the original Charrette. The community said, the harbour's lovely, but it's really dull. Nothing goes on in there. There's a pier, which is the one on the left you can see there. On the left-hand side, which is just to do the fishing industry, that's okay. But we want in the sort of original drawing on the left-hand side, and then this is what we then went on to deliver. But previously there were no pontoons where the boats are floating. The road had been narrowed down, the vehicular capacity had been maintained, and the pavements widened to encourage and allow pavement trading to go on, which the local authority hadn't hitherto allowed, which really transformed that space.
There are some. Sorry, I thought there was going to be another slide there with an image that you were talking about, but it wasn't. I don't know what's happened to it.
No, sorry.
Anyway.
So heavily involved in the programme with the Stephen Joseph Theatre, we really wanted to make sure that art and creativity and the cultural vibrancy of the town was at the heart of what was doing, and you may have seen reference to them previously. They were very involved. Sorry, we're dodging back now to our harbour. This is how the harbour used to look at low water on the left-hand side, and it was a complete waste of space. Very, very little went on there. No income came from that. And then when we put the pontoons in, we worked with all various partners. We excavated 260,000 tonnes of harbour bottom, took that out to sea and dropped it off, and then replaced that now with the pontoons. These pontoons were 3 times oversubscribed by the time we actually got to deliver them, and there's still a waiting list of about 4 years to get a boat on there.
Just worth saying that one of the concepts, one of the 10 towns of Scarborough, was to create a 360-degree town. And obviously, coastal towns have that issue of a 180-degree catchment. So this is very much in response to that concept. It got everyone thinking. And in the old days, Scarborough drew people in from the North Sea, fantastic trade, fishing, etc. So this is very much trying to sort of reinvent a new economy, which we'll come to right at the end.
We do. Moving swiftly on. This was the response from the public sector investment. This was the response by the private sector. They put up a programme of competitions to light your boat up at night in the winter. They installed free bay Wi-Fi at the beginning of free Wi-Fi going into areas like that. They dug deep themselves. We had very high quality public realm. They used to build ships in this particular part of Scarborough. So we must made sure that when the design was done, that there was a reference to that through the use of natural products, such as the wood there in the bus shelter and in that long bench. That the police box isn't from Doctor Who. It probably can be if you want it to be, but it's there. It was originally there and it's still there. We attracted a lot of inward investment into there. Ask came and put a large restaurant right on the front. Places like that one that you can see on the left-hand picture, the Quayside Bar, used to be a really low-quality amusement arcade, and that cafe there has changed hands 3 or 4 times and since, and is still trading. I'm pleased to say.
Can I just mention about where the restaurant is? But that was where all the fishermen's tackle and all the lobster pots and everything was, and so it was quite a negotiation. But having the vision, endorsed by thousands of people, was obviously hugely important in that negotiation to free up that space.
A lot of the fishermen, you may have referred back to go back to the picture of the yachts on the marina. There's a lot of opposition from the local fishermen about that because they didn't like the ideas. We were interfering with what they call the village green. They didn't use it for anything. They just felt we were interfering in their space. But we had that mandate from the community to get on and do something about it, which was powerful stuff. This is a very underperforming, very smelly, what was it? It was a museum for natural history, and it smelt of dead terrapins when he went in. It was absolutely horrible. And it was really, I think on its busiest year, last year of performance, it saw 4,000 people through the front door, and I'm sure they were lying. I think they'd increased that by twice. But nonetheless, we had, as you may have noticed, one of our boxes earlier was the Arts and Creatives Group. The Arts and Creatives Group created the storm behind to get the power to get this delivered, and when we opened this, we opened at 77% occupancy, and within 3 months after that it was full, which we were really chuffed about. It was a very worthwhile investment and still really drives forward the community, if you like, the creative sector in the town. Another project was a lovely old museum called Rotunda. You can't really do too much with this because it's such a small building, but it's very popular, it gets a lot of stuff, and it allows us to shout from the rooftops about our dinosaur coast, because it's all about geology and such like, so we whip in dinosaurs because they're nothing to do with geology too much, but they are sort of, aren't they? They're found in the ground. But it allows us to do that. Another load of information, another load of activity was to refurbish our Scarborough Spa complex. A lot of business used to come my way in the hotel business from this space, but it was dwindling. The union business, for example, tailed off. A lot of those sort of those types of conferences tailed off, but the advent of functions and events, and particularly concerts, has now really started to pep up again, and they are now replacing some of that former conference business with having high quality shows, and that was one of the properties around on the left, a place called the Crown for a few years as well, and these sort of properties have seen heavily levels of investment, a far better performance year round. The last year of my mates operating with that place got 92% year-round occupancy.
This is a four-star.
It's a four-star property now, and it is a very popular place. I wrote the business plan for putting a new roof on with bedrooms up there. When the bugger, I gave him my thing, and he didn't give me anything for that. The cheeky son. Not even dinner. Anyway, one of the things we really did do was, after a while, we'd been running our meetings with all of our community friends coming along, and it was really getting very vibrant and very thorough. But the one people that were missing were the suits. We really did need to start getting the community of our business people involved in the programme. So we set up a thing called the Business Ambassadors. Happened to have met a guy from Salt Lake City, actually, and he was telling us about this program they did in Utah, and in Salt Lake City in Utah, and it was about business ambassadors, and we've nicked his model and emulated it here in Scarborough, and it's really highly successful activity. And in fact, this month we've got our 15th Science and Engineering Week going on, where all the children from all the primary and secondary schools come through the door, 2 minutes, thank you, come through the door and get an opportunity of having a quick look at what it might be like to go and study STEM subjects. On the back of that, the top there, we've got a Scarborough UTC. We've made such a lot of progress doing that the UTC was able to be able to find funding from not only business sponsors in the town, but also from the FEFC and the Department for Education, and we got ourselves a brand new £16 million school at the top.
The Director of Education, when I saw it,
Sorry,
I'm surprised every time I say it.
Where are you coming from? Get away.
When I wrote the case study for the book, the Director of Regeneration told me that without the vision process and the coming together of the community and the fact they know each other, the business work, etc., this wouldn't have happened, because this required very quick response from the Scarborough community to get the government funding and make this happen.
It did. It worked a treat, and it's still whizzing along. And they're about to they do all sorts of very exotic sort of competitions there. I won't bore you with the background. I'm up against time. So we entered a few awards, and we managed to win 4. I'd like to think you can win 1 by mistake, but 4 begins to get a bit of a pattern. We won Britain's Enterprising Awards there, as you can see, the most enterprising place in Europe. That was in 2009. Project of the year and that. And so we were pretty chuffed with what came our way from all the work that we did. And it is still ongoing, although I'm no longer involved there. As I mentioned right at the very outset, I work elsewhere now, but I still live in Scarborough. And we really started to change that terminal decline that it mentions at the bottom there, that the town was going into. We really needed to change that business yield, increase levels of employment, and raise the game generally for the town, which I'd like to suggest we did. Jazz Festival is one thing in particular, and this year is the 21st anniversary of that festival. Another project that wasn't a Renaissance project, but we started and stimulated the town to do more things, was we used to have this lovely old open-air theatre, which was allowed to fall into decline by the local authority. Anyway, we found the funding for that, and we got that tarted up, and it's now playing to fantastic audiences, not through all the year, but certainly through the summer. I was given the job of looking after Scarborough Market, which was quite interesting. And the one thing I recognised very quickly was a load of wasted space. We put an extra floor in it and completely renovated that. That was coastal communities funding we got for that.
We ran a charrette with the young Academy Urbanists, so that was really beneficial, working in the market with the local community to agree what the brief was.
And that's still going strong. And finally, the sort of the next steps really, and the next big one for us, you may recall a picture of the harbour and the pier on the left-hand side. Some characters talk the previous chief, the just departed chief executive, which is probably quite a good thing, in that they want to put a load of leisure stuff on that west pier there, as it's called on the left-hand side. We fought tooth and nail, and my harbour group, who's still around, got together and said, no, we want to do something different about this, with all the oncoming wind farm activity, which is huge on the Dogger Bank, which is only 50 miles out to sea. We're now getting that as a wind farm hub. So we're now getting delivery quite soon of one of the huge boat lifts that lifts boats clean out the water so they can annually be inspected and the like. That's your three-legged stool. It's about government and developer community, and it was just an absolute dream to run such a lovely programme with such great people, and have the inspiration of people like Charles around often, and I get dragged away on some of these as well, these charrettes, don't we?
We do, yes, and I think the message, I suppose, is about community engagement, community involvement. They're the ones, it's the community who's going to stay there. This is a common theme of the conference, I think. And Mary Clear from Tomodon, if you haven't met her or talked to her, go and see her in Incredible Edible, because it's people in making the place then, whatever we do, it's the people who then inhabit and make the place function and thrive. So sorry about a few glitches, I don't know why that happened, but thank you very much indeed.
My fault.